So in the latest run of Aquaman by Jeremy Adams, after gaining a new connection to the blue, Arthur Curry gets a massive power boost and he gets abilities that he's never had before. But what exactly is the blue? Where did it come from? What is a parliament? And are there parliaments that control the other elements in the DC universe? These are all questions that I'm going to be answering today in our deep dive into the parliaments of the DC universe. But before we get into it, please, for me, if you enjoy this video, then consider leaving a like, leaving a comment, or just subscribing to my page. I'd really appreciate it. Now, the parliaments are honestly one of the most underrated and underused concepts in the DC universe, so the lore surrounding them can be a little convoluted at times. That's why I figured the best way to start this video would be by explaining what a parliament is and then going into each of the individual parliaments, explaining what they control, what they protect, who their most notable avatars are, and what powers they give to their avatars. Now, what exactly is a parliament? You've heard me use the word a couple times already, but what exactly do they do? And the short answer to that is they're the protectors of the natural world. See, everything in the natural world is connected through the parliament. So the green connects and protects all of the plant life in the universe. The red connects and protects all of the animal life in the universe. So in essence, the parliaments connect everything in the universe and they are its sworn protectors. Now, it is important to know that the parliaments are neither good or evil. They're completely neutral. All they're doing is protecting the elements that they're assigned to. Now, in order for the parliaments to protect their individual elements, they will actually choose guardians or avatars that they'll imbue with extra power to act as guardians of the individual elements. And we actually see this a lot in Swamp Thing, where Swamp Thing acts as an avatar and guardian of the green. So if anybody on Earth is massively damaging planets, then Swamp Thing will be sent in to stop them. So now that we know what a parliament is, let's take a look at each one of the parliaments individually, starting with the most famous one, the green. Now, like I said earlier, the green is basically what connects and controls all plant life throughout the universe. So anybody with a deep connection to the green has full control over all plant life. And we actually see this a lot with Swamp Thing and Poison Ivy. Swamp Thing and the green both have a really deep connection to each other, both in and out of comics, because the green would actually make its first appearance all the way back in 1986 in Swamp Thing issue number 47. It says that 450 million years ago, the first plant elemental Yggdrasil created the Parliament of Trees as a way to protect all of the plant life in the universe. Swamp Thing was actually the last of these plant elementals, and then Crisis on Infinite Earths happened and it completely reset the timeline, giving the green and the Parliament of Trees a brand new origin story. See, in the New 52 origin, the Lords of Order actually created the green at the dawn of humanity by performing a ritual that would infuse the natural world with power, creating the green, the red, the gray, and the divided. Personally, I like the New 52 origin better. It just seems to make more sense that the Lords of Order would have created all of the parliaments, but really, you can just go with whichever origin that you want. Now, like I said, the Parliament of Trees and the green are the protectors of all plant life throughout the universe, and they do this by choosing avatars and guardians. They will then give these avatars brand new abilities that allow them to control and communicate with all plant life, regenerate their body from basically nothing, and even teleport across planets. And it's all of these abilities that actually make Swamp Thing one of the most powerful characters on the magic side of the DC universe. So now that we know what the green is, let's talk about some of the most famous avatars of the green. Now obviously we have Poison Ivy and Swamp Thing, but we also have the Floronic Man, Black Orchid, and the Alan Scott Green Lantern of Earth 2 was an avatar of the green, which I think is a really cool change to his character. And that's basically all there is to know about the green, so it's time to move on to what can be considered the most important of the parliaments, the blue. Now, I'm sure you guessed this already, but the blue is what controls and protects all water and aquatic life throughout the universe. And because life wouldn't exist without water, the blue technically is the most important of the parliaments in the DC universe, because without the blue, the other parliaments wouldn't exist. Now, the blue would actually make its first appearance in Swamp Thing number 158 in 1995, almost 9 years after the green makes its first appearance. And besides that, there's really not much that's known about the blue. Despite being the most important of the elemental forces, it really doesn't come up that much, except in this most recent run of Aquaman. Now, in this latest run of Aquaman, we can see that a connection to the blue not only allows the avatars to control all ocean water and aquatic life, but it allows them to swim faster, and a deep connection to the blue allows you to teleport to oceans on other planets, which is really sick. Now, because we know so little about the blue, there are actually only 4 known avatars of the blue so far. We have Arthur Curry, Naiad, Azathoth, and Dagon. And that's basically all there is to know about the blue. I really hope that in future comics we can dive deeper into what the blue is and learn a little bit more about its lore and its place in the universe. Now, even though we barely know anything about the blue, we know even less about this next Parliament, the White. Now, when I say that we know basically nothing about the White, I mean we know basically nothing about the White. We know that it controls all air and flying creatures throughout the universe, but that's basically it. We do know that it has the same origin as the green and the blue, but so far there has not been a main universe avatar of the White, so we don't know anything about it. There's actually only ever been one avatar of the White in all of DC Comics, and he comes from Earth 2. His name was Sam Zhao. Now, the powers that Sam had included aerokinesis, flight, energy constructs, and weather manipulation, so we can only assume that these are the powers that avatars of the White get. And that's it. That's literally all that we know about the White, which is why I'm glad that we have a lot more information about this next Parliament, the Red. Now, out of all of the Parliaments that we've talked about so far, the Red probably has one of the most complicated histories that there is. See, back when the Red made its first appearance in Animal Man #1 back in 1988, it was originally called the Morphogenetic Grid, and it's what allowed Animal Man to tap into the abilities of all of the animals on the planet. Now, just like the blue and the green, the Lords of Order created the Red at the dawn of time, and it's the force that permeates and protects all animal life throughout the universe. And what's really cool is if there's a hero or a villain with animal-based powers in the DC universe, then more than likely they have a deep connection to the Red. And because of this, there are actually more avatars of the Red than there are for any of the other Parliaments. Basically, any hero or villain with an animal-based power can be considered an avatar of the Red. So people like Animal Man, Beast Boy, Cheetah, Vixen, Man-Bat can all be considered avatars of the Red. Now, because the red represents all animal life in the universe and the green represents all plant life in the universe, the two have worked extremely closely together since the dawn of time. Their main enemy is the black, which represents decay and rot throughout the universe, and the green and the red have been teaming up to try to stop it since they were created. And this is honestly a perfect segue into our next parliament, the black. Now, like I said, the black is the parliament that controls rot and decay throughout the universe, and it's actually one of the newer parliaments on this list. In that issue, it's explained that the rot has basically existed as a counterpart to the red and the green since the dawn of time. The red and the green try to fight it off, but because the black is basically a part of death, it can never truly be defeated, just staved off for a little bit. Just like the other parliaments, the black does have avatars that it uses as its protectors, and it gives these avatars really crazy abilities. These abilities include the complete control over death, including bringing people back from the dead, complete regeneration of your body, and the control of the rotting of organic beings, so you could make somebody rot from the inside out. Now, the black actually does something kind of weird with its avatars because most of its avatars come from a single family, the Arcane family. 3 of its most notable avatars are Anton Arcane, William Arcane, and Abigail Arcane. And that's basically all that we know about the black. It's in a constant war with the red and the green, and it can never truly be defeated because it is an aspect of death itself. Now, this next parliament is actually my favorite because it works a little bit differently than the other ones. See, next up we're talking about the gray, and the gray basically controls and connects all fungal life throughout the universe. But see, the cool thing about the gray is that it doesn't actually create or assign its own avatars. Instead, it corrupts and steals avatars from the green and the red. And we actually see a great example of this in the gray's pre-crisis origin back in Swamp Thing #4 in 1988. See, the pre-crisis origin says that at the beginning of creation, Scylla, the master of forest lords, seeded plants with potential for life throughout the universe, and this is how plant life spread. In our solar system, there were 3 planets that were seeded: Earth, Jupiter, and a third gray world. On this gray world, there was a collective fungal intelligence that grew and thrived on the gray instead of the green. This collective intelligence soon made its way to Earth in the form of a meteor, and it soon corrupted the 13th avatar of the green, Matongo. After Matongo was corrupted, the gray and the green existed on Earth for many years, but then the dawn of humans came. See, mankind's potential for destruction actually led Matongo to tempt humanity with the fruit of the Tree of Knowledge. This act would prompt a war between the gray and the green, and it's going to weaken both sides, and it's going to force the green to leave its current home in the Garden of Eden and retreat to Brazil. After the war, Matongo would go into a rest for eons, and the gray and the green would end up sharing the earth for the rest of time. Now, even though that origin was later retconned and it was stated that the Lords of Order are the ones that created the gray, I love the pre-crisis origin for the gray. I thought that was really cool. Now, the main universe only has 2 known avatars of the gray. There's Matongo from the origin story, and there's Xylon, who is currently showing up in the latest Poison Ivy run. Now, we don't exactly know what powers the gray gives its avatars, but we do know it's kind of like the same powers that the green gives its avatars. You get full control over fungal life, complete regeneration, and teleportation across vast distances. Now, that's pretty much all we know about the gray. Like I said, it is my favorite of the parliaments, which makes me wish that it would show up more so we could get a little bit more lore about it. And I would also like to see maybe a war between the gray and the green sometime in the future. I think that would be really cool. But since that's all we know about the gray, it's time to move on to our last parliament, the Melt. Now, the Melt is actually unique because it has 0 known avatars. There's no known avatars across any universe that represent the Melt. So we actually don't know what kind of powers the Melt would actually give. All we know is the Melt controls and connects all rock and earth throughout the universe. I do like to speculate that avatars of the Melt can actually like control the ground the way that Toph can from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think that would be really sick. Now, even though there are no actual known avatars of the Melt, during the war against the Dark Multiverse, Clayface actually worked as sort of a representative of the Melt, even though he's not actually one of their avatars. So the Melt actually makes its first appearance in Swamp Thing number 145 back in 1994, and other than that, there's really nothing to know about the Melt. It's just the parliament that protects all stones and rocks throughout the universe. And that's pretty much it for the canon parliaments of the DC universe. However, there are 2 non-canon parliaments called the Divided and the Metal. Now, the Divided at one point was a canon parliament, but eventually it got retconned and it's no longer canon. But essentially, the Divided is the parliament that controls and connects all bacteria and viruses throughout the universe. So characters like Liesel Pond, the sentient smallpox virus from the Green Lanterns, could be considered avatars of the Divided. And because they're now non-canon, there's really not much else to know about them. They're just essentially a group of sentient bacteria and viruses that have come together to create their own parliament. And then we come across the Metal, the only unnatural parliament in the DC universe. See, the Metal was created at some point in the future when a civilization of sentient machines ascended into a hive mind that grew until it was connected to all computers and machines in the universe. And that's it. Those are the parliaments of the DC universe. Honestly, one of the most underrated and underused concepts that DC currently has. I've always loved the parliaments. I love that it connects every natural thing in the DC universe, and it gives these avatars these amazing abilities. And what's really cool about the parliaments is their avatars exist in sort of a gray area. They're neither a hero or a villain. They just do what they can to protect their parliament, which is why I love a lot of Swamp Thing's comic books. But let me know in the comments, what do y'all think about the parliaments of the DC universe? Do you wish that they would expand on the parliaments a little bit more? And out of all of the ones that we listed today, which one is y'all's favorites? Now, for anybody that made it to the end, I really appreciate you, but I gotta go, so later.